Welcome to the Elder Brew House. My name is Noble. I'm joined by my hosts, JK Dubs and Icy Mike. We have a returning guest host by the name of Hard Nuts. We are talking today about CEDH myths and what we need to do to dispel them.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting topic because, whenever you first start playing CEDH, there's a lot of everyone plays the exact same combo. 90% of the decks are exactly the same. And, the more you play CEDH, the more you realize that's just extremely inaccurate.
Yeah, what's the most common myth that you've heard so far, Hard Nuts?
I mean, for me, it was definitely every deck is the same, right? And that Blue Farm takes up 30% of the meta. And that, unless you're on Blue Farm, you might as well not play. And I mean, even today, if you look at today's 10K event, there's only one Blue Farm in the top 4 table at the Invitational. And at the Uninvitational, the Open, according to a message I got earlier today, Drago Timna won. So it was
That's a wild one.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what I was saying. Now, I haven't confirmed that. I don't know how accurate it is. But that's what they announced in the Mardu Discord. Tim the Drago took it all. Which I can see. That's a very good deck. Very quick. But yeah, I mean, it goes to show that this meta is constantly evolving and constantly changing. And realistically, I think the bans ended up being phenomenal for the format.
Yeah, definitely. I did want to touch a little bit on what you said at first too about not playing Blue Farm, not playing the big decks, the big top tier, tier 0, tier 1 decks. For me, I'm pretty new to CDH. Personally, myself, I think I've only been playing maybe a year now, doing tournaments and the such. And there is a big difference between EDH, tournament EDH, and CDH, I feel. And I think people's outlook on CDH is through the eyes of tournament play, and they disregard completely the rest of the format. And if you're not at that tournament level consistently, then they don't consider it a CDH. They would consider it what would be now the bracket system of bracket 4.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where they would get that, but I can't say I agree. Because if you ever play against a bracket 4 deck, most of the decks that would be in the CEDH tier, or consider bracket 5, that aren't straight up the top 5 or top 10 decks in the format, can still perform really well, can still spike an entire tournament. I mean, so it makes it really hard, especially whenever your average meta, I looked this up earlier today. According to CDH Top 16, the largest meta share of any one deck is 7%.
That's what, Kinnan?
No, that's Blue Farm.
Okay. Kinnan's another big one too.
Kinnan's third. But yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say that a deck is because it is not one of the top decks. If you're playing Wheeliod, or if you're playing I don't know, Chatterfang, or if you're playing one of these other decks that within the last 6 months have gotten a top 16 at the tournament, that you're not playing CEDH. How could you justify that if they go out and smoke tournament EDH, the top decks? Now, I will say this: in my mind, there are definitely differences between CEDH and tournament EDH. For example, you cannot play stacks in tournament EDH.
Correct.
Like,
yeah, you just can't.
yeah,
It'll
it's too slow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. There's some instances where stacks are good, but it's not stacks in the general sense. It's more of taxes that I've seen that can help. But outside of that, for tournament, you don't see a ton of stacks. You don't see a lot of, you might see a blind obedience, but it's a 1 or 2 off card in a deck. It's not.
No, it's not. It's not 10 plus cards. Yeah, it's the Dranith and the Oppo and all of them.
The basic, streamlined, to the point.
It's the hard hitting ones.
Yeah, it's small packages. It's not Urza stacks. It's not, mono white stacks where they're trying to lock you out of the entire game for the whole game.
I agree completely. And like a lot of people call that soft stacks, right? Where it's like stacks but fairly limiting. Yeah, or like soft stacks would be like technically like a heuristic study is soft stacks, right? So it taxes you, but it doesn't like really like force you to do something.
Well, it gives you a decision.
Yeah, or charismatic vampire, or excuse me, charismatic conqueror. I don't know what I call it. Charismatic conqueror is a great example, right? Like you can always bring your thing into play tapped or untapped, but if you do it untapped, I get a vampire. That's a great example of a soft stacks piece where you can get a lot of value out of like stacksing the table, and people are much more likely to like make the decision you want them to make.
Yeah, and you could play that in like Winota.
Charismatic Conqueror, it's commonly seen in Marnius, it's commonly seen in Winota, it's commonly seen in, ironically, Tayam, simply because it provides more creatures for Tayam to be able to put vigilance counters onto. Another common myth that I have heard is that CEDH players, CEDH, not TEDH, there's a big difference between these two. CEDH players do not enjoy teaching people how to play the game, and that the community is a very big gatekeeping community. I have actually experienced the opposite when it comes to most regular CEDH players and even TEDH players when they're just playing regular CEDH. They would be more than happy to teach you how to play the game. And the gatekeeping, most communities for CEDH are rather proxy friendly, from my understanding. What's you guys' view on this?
I agree with definitely proxy friendly from a lot of the community. As I said, I'm a lot newer, so I'm getting that fresh look at a lot of the communities, and now I'm starting to get into the point where now I'm interacting with a lot more communities as well as a lot of the TEDH community now. For me, it's definitely been very hands-on. Everybody's willing to, like, if you're kind of like fumbling through your deck, it's a new deck, but others have played a similar deck or similar combos, they're able to kind of help you through it. Like we had a play day yesterday, which we'll be having gameplay moving forward of that. We had one game in there where guy is like third time playing the deck, very new to CDH, and the difference of his play succeeding and failing dictated the entire game. I think I was playing on Boja. I think you were there as well, Hard Nuts.
Yeah, I was there. He basically it was a Wheelie player, and he was casting. What was he casting? He was casting a clone effect. I can't remember which one though.
It was a Clever Impersonator. There was a Scion player as well. Scion had a Broodlord on the field, and he was going to go and clone, I think it was a land.
No, it was his Jewel.
Yeah, Coveted Jewel. He was playing Coveted Jewel, and he was like, oh, I'm going to clone the Coveted Jewel. And it's like, well, as you had said, you were like, well, there's a Broodlord on the field. You can go and get anything you want in your deck by doing this instead of just getting your Coveted Jewel, which gives you that momentary small amount of mana. Instead of getting that Broodlord to go find another piece to the combo to kind of close out the game. And that made the big difference. If he had just went for the Coveted Jewel, I believe, the seed after him, and I was ready to go for the win. And him getting that Broodlord closed out the game.
Yeah, that was in a position where we all kind of had wins in hand, and it was like I could have just kept my mouth shut, but I do not believe he would have learned anything from it.
No,
you know what I mean.
He could have had a moment afterwards too.
Yeah,
but definitely it was a good moment for him because it was in the moment. He saw the pieces, and after, as you had pointed out, and I kind of helped with that explanation towards him of, hey, once you get this, you can go and get what you need. You can use your creatures then to convoke that spell, so keep that in mind when you're searching through your deck to get your pieces. And then I don't remember what card you told him to get, but
I told him to go get Hullbreaker Horror.
Yeah, Hullbreaker Horror, because he already had a 0-drop on the field. I believe he had Soul Ring or a 1-drop in his hand to start the combo. It was a mana positive. And then he could sit there and just keep bouncing them. And then he ended up doing that and going for it.
That was great for him. Like, it really put him in a position where he could actually win the game. And I always appreciate... So here's something that I know it doesn't irk a lot of other people, but it irks me. I'm always trying to get people to make the best possible decisions. Whenever we're playing a game, I want you to make the wisest choice. And sometimes it turns out to like us like stopping the game and talking a little bit. I might get a little razzmatazz in on you, but I want everyone who I play with to be the best players they can be, because I've always believed that you are who you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself with the best players, if you develop people, you yourself will develop and grow in accordance.
Just as a person too, right?
Yeah, that's just general life philosophy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that's kind of a way to dispel a myth that I had. You're going about it in the sense of just teaching people and making them better players. And I had on my list one myth was that CEDH players hate casuals or people that are new.
Most of us are casuals. A lot of us are new. Like, there are a lot of new players in CEDH, especially in the last year and a half. Like,
the format has definitely blown up in the last year and a half. With the huge expansion into that competitive, I believe honestly the brackets has helped kind of open people's eyes to the difference between CDH and casual as archetypes to deck. Before, with the power system, people's ideas of what a powerful deck have definitely shifted in the community. And this is my opinion on this, but the difference between a 3 and a 4 or 5 is a lot more clear because of the frameworks that have been put in place. Are they perfect? No. I won't say that the brackets are perfect, but they are definitely a great starting point to kind of see where your deck kind of lands in a sense, so you know kind of what you're playing with.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good hardline rules, right? Like, instead of before, where it was like just a grayscale of 1 to 10, where it was very dependent upon the deck brewer, right? So if you say, like, I built this as a 7, like, maybe that is my 10, because that's the best synergy deck I could possibly build. Because of my lack of card knowledge, my lack of capability as a deck player, my inexperience as a Magic player. But if someone else goes, oh, I built this as a 10, and they are one of the best in the format, like, that's gonna be a 10. And so before, the rules were so vague. And so I really think that adding like rigid structure to how we gauge the deck is great. Now, I will say this, as far as the topic of like, there is a lot of gatekeeping in CEDH, I think I understand where that is coming from. Because the number one thing you hear from new players who are trying to join the format is, hey, I want to make this commander CEDH. It's a commander that has no capability to be CDH.
I've definitely seen that.
It happens all the time. There's no card advantage engine. There's no draw engine. There's nothing that suggests that the deck should be a CEDH deck. It's just I like this commander, so I want to play it, and I want to play it high power. And that's what people think CEDH is, because they've never really played CEDH.
So what would you tell that person?
I normally tell that person, like, hey, like, that's a great commander. You can make it as high power as you want to, but you're always going to struggle against the strongest tables, because there's a few things that you need as a commander, in my mind, to be CEDH.
Don't you think all those things are available in pretty much every color, though?
Oh, I'm not every color, yes, but not every commander.
Not every commander can be. I agree with that, but a lot of the time, if you just chose that commander because that's your favorite commander, you can still build sometimes a CDH deck inside of it as a shell, and the commander is just a front piece. I have seen this happening where they end up doing, maybe they don't like Yuriko quite as much as a commander, but they're doing heavy tutor to make sure they can get Yuriko, and they're playing Satoru. You know, where Satoru is still he's definitely a decent ninja commander. Does he have the power of Yuriko herself? No. But the amount of shenanigans that he can pull off by having him as a commander, he could definitely be a high power. But if you built it 100% the same as Yuriko, and you just swap Satoru from the 99 and Yuriko from commander and swap the positions, it will be slightly lower powered because of that commander choice. It could still compete at a CDH table, maybe not in, you know, a top 8, but it can definitely compete at that table where you're swapping around creatures. But I have seen that.
That's clear. You're giving them the expectation, like you just said. Like you also just said, Hard Nuts. Like, I think the problem a lot of people have, back to my myth real quick, CDH players hate casuals. I think we have to make it clear, like, the beef isn't between the players, it's between
it is.
the expectation.
I mean, it's also has nothing to do with pub stompers. Like, here's the thing. Pub stompers are not CDH players. Like, whoever comes in to stomp your pub because they bring the strongest power 4 deck they possibly can and sit down with a bunch of 3s or 2s, that's not what CDH is.
Right. Those people exist in every card game.
Yeah, 100%.
They have their own little mental thing where they need to feel like they have that ability to be better than other people. But the problem is they're doing that, and they have put themselves in a position where it's not a fair comparison.
They put themselves into the seat of power where they have absolute control over how the game ends up going, due to the power discrepancy between their deck and the other decks at the pod.
Definitely. It's like having an amateur, you know, gymnast versus an Olympic level gymnast. They're not on the same level at all.
It's just an ego boost.
100%.
Yeah. And it's not fair, and people who are very casual with the format will assume that is the CEDH mindset, right? Like, but it's not. That's not what CEDH players are there to do. That's not why you build a CEDH deck. Normally, CEDH players come from like another competitive format, where it's like you played in Modern, you played in Pioneer, you played Legacy, and you, quite frankly, got tired of your decks being banned. I don't know how many people who I've talked to come from these extremely powerful formats and then move over to CEDH because they got tired of their deck being banned or their format got trashed. Part of why we had this big explosion in CEDH players over the last year or so is that Modern became a dumpster fire.
I mean, especially especially pre-ban when people just randomly were pulling their mana crypts out their binders, being like, might as well do this.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, people switched formats because Commander has always been one of those formats that is an eternal format, and yes, it gets bans, but it's never been as severe. We all see it post-ban. How many decks truly fell off after, like, post-ban? Like, some of them, like, shifted in power level.
I would definitely say a handful. Like, I don't see nearly as much Najeela. Godo's disappeared. Kenrith's another one that's kind of dropped out.
Najeela, Orville,
Winota.
Winota.
Winota was already on its way out. And a lot of those commanders were already kind of, like, outscaled, right? Like, Winota had already been outscaled over the summer. I barely saw any Winota this summer.
It's not partially due to the power creep that's been happening with our sets, as we keep getting more and more powerful cards that outshine the utility of previous, like, boogeyman commanders. That's one of the terms that a lot of people like to use when they describe the meta commanders of the past, is boogeyman commanders like Xur and such.
Xur has kind of disappeared because of the meta shift. And I was playing on Xur for a very long time and just shifted over. But the Xur shift is really more because people in the community moved towards a more, like, removal heavy interaction. So for a long time, Xur has been able to kind of fly under the radar because most combos that people focused on were very spell-based combos. And why that still is the case, you're seeing more and more creature-heavy combos. And in order to counteract that, people are running more removal. I was saying earlier how I'm running like 4 or 5 different removal pieces in my Marnius deck currently. And I mean, no, well, not including like counters and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Like hard removal. But like that's more than I've ever ran in any deck. I've never ran.
That's still low. I'm super heavy control. Even in my faster decks, I gotta have at least, if I don't have the access to counters, so Sans Blue, I'm running 15 or so, because especially in Sans Blue, because now I don't have that.
Sans Blue is a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
But
with Blue, I'm doing at least 8.
Oh, see, that's so high. Like, but then again, that's in the response. You are a newer player. I've been around a little bit longer. So, I mean, most of these decks aren't running more than, like, for a long time you'd run maybe 2 or 3. But now you're seeing double, triple that.
Yeah, especially with a lot of the new removal coming out, it has been so powerful. Mm-hmm. You know, there's been a lot of 1-drop, 2-drop removals that are just, they hit such a broad range of
Unwanted
stuff
remake,
that they're worth running.
Very recent one.
Definitely.
Yeah. Still not seeing much play, but I mean, you see it in a couple of mono white decks.
Yeah, mono white or 2-color where they don't have access necessarily to.
Yeah.
Black.
Yeah. And so, like, that's why Xur has kind of fallen out. And I was on Xur for a long time. Back in February, still able to spike rounds with Xur, but it's gotten to a point where, like, it's just impossible to do so. And every single turn, someone's going to have at least 1 or 2 removal pieces, and so you'll never get an attack with them. But yeah, sorry, back to what we were talking about. I wanted to add in also, when we were talking about, like, myths, or that there are definitely, or when we were talking about, like, that CDH players are toxic. So part of that also comes from some of the communities that people join. And I'll say this specifically about Reddit.
Reddit is Reddit. It's its own beast.
Yeah, But specifically, the CEDH community on Reddit is very toxic. That's why most people who play CDH don't participate in Reddit. Like Discord, different Discord servers and things along those lines are much more popular. You know, you just join one Discord, join another Discord, and like before long, you have 15 different CDH Discords you're a part of. Because, yeah, that's more community based. Where Reddit feels like a dumpster fire.
That, as well as I've noticed too, with if you just jump onto Spell Table to play some online, sometimes you can get some really, really good games with some really cool people. In other games, you get people that are super, super toxic. Like you come in and they're like, "Oh, that's your commander," and it's just like, "Wow, okay, well, fuck you."
All too often during random games when I'm playing Felithar, people are like, "Oh, why the hell is that your commander? It's not any good in CEDH," and then they proceed to get their faces smacked by her because they...
Oh, it's wonderful doing that.
What? It's kind of funny.
Because they don't understand it.
Well, that's going to happen when you're playing. Like, Felithar has definitely won tournaments. I mean, there was one, or not one tournament, a top 16 to tournament. And so, like, it is gaining traction, and it's one of those decks that are still on the come up, like it's still being built. And you're going to get that with, like, new fresh decks that are still under construction.
Yeah. And I'm talking, these are people that are playing like TNK, TNT, Rogthras, Rogsai. I've faced so many randoms that have been playing these top tier decks, and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm playing the best deck in the meta. You're not going to be able to beat us." And it's like, okay, we'll see. And then they proceed to not be able to have an answer because my deck is primarily creature combos, and no one's running enough creature interaction in terms of counter spells on the stack or anything like that. Because once my creatures hit the board, I don't care if they die. They'll come back, or that's exactly what needs to happen is they die.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing I wish I would see kind of in response to that is stifle effects. I have been seeing people start to bring a couple here and there back.
I've
Stifle,
seen
Tails End,
come up again.
Trick Bind. Yeah, because of the creature-based combos are a lot harder to interact with outside of just killing it. But then you have decks like Felithar where you want your stuff to die. So them removing it, putting it in the graveyard, you just kind of shrug it off and you're like, all right, cool. Makes it easier for me. And you just keep rolling and it doesn't affect you, unlike, some other ones.
Well, that's why to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of Trick Bind specifically. But the card I do love is Angel's Grace. Like Trick Bind, I think is very potentially very good card. But Trick Bind will also oftentimes only stop a combo until they can pick it back up. Now it definitely helps if it's a combo that is like trigger based. Like that is where Trick Bind really shines. The thing about it is though, Angel's Grace kind of hits that same mark, where it will fix a combo that is trigger based, but it also has a secondary capability where not only will it hit that combo that is trigger based, but it will also can put you in a position, say if you're an Adnaz deck, like that can stop you from winning the game or let you win the game, or stop you from losing the game and let you win the game. Or like if you're getting attacked by a bunch of people and like you've gotten to a point, everyone's been there. My Marnius deck went there earlier today, where it got to a point where everyone was kind of out of combos. Everyone had already tried to resolve 2 or 3 like finishers, and we were just kind of sitting there at the table, draw passing. And luckily enough for me, part of my maneuver is I had actually stolen a Bow Boys earlier and did a Time Twister into it, and so everyone's deck had gotten to reset, but I had a 21-20 and no one could really do anything about it. So I was able to swing out continuously with a 21 and just smoke people. But an Angel's Grace will save you for a turn or maybe 2 turns, depending upon the exact situation, and keep you alive, even if in situations where Trick Bind wouldn't necessarily be of great assistance. But also, that's a bit of a pet card for me. I love my Angel's Grace. I would love to see more people play it.
Okay, so I was going through the other CEDH Discords I'm a part of, and I kind of sent out some feelers for some myths that people wanted to see get, like, dispelled. One very big one that was common amongst all of the Discords was that CEDH is a turn 2 format. If you win within 2 turns, it's not CEDH. Every single game I've been in has been like turn 6 or more, unless I'm the one going for the win.
Well, that's the thing, right? You can count on one hand the number of decks currently that can go off 1 and 2.
You have like Inen, Magda, Rogsai, Thrasios, maybe.
The new build, maybe?
Yeah, the new one I've seen kind of go off pretty quick. Turn 2, turn 3. I haven't seen it turn 1 it yet, but...
No. Potentially Rao. I've seen it go off turn 2, but I've seen it kind of also fizzle a lot. That deck is still under construction.
I think it's a glass cannon, personally, from Rao for me. I see it as a very, very big glass cannon. Like, it can go off very quickly, very consistently, but if there's somebody with enough reactionary responses across the table, it fizzles. Once it fizzles, it doesn't get back up.
Yeah, it's the same problem that what's her name has, Stella Lee. Where Stella Lee, when Stella Lee fizzles, you're kind of at the mercy of the table itself.
Yeah,
I mean,
Stella Lee though is a little bit more robust.
It is. But still, you're very much at the mercy of the table itself. I mean, you can hope that nothing can go up, and part of that is like how long Stella Lee's been worked on, right? Like, Stella Lee has been worked on for a while now, and Stella Lee is going to get more and more robust, and I think you're going to see the same thing with V, where V is still in its super early infancy. Like, no one really knows what they're doing yet.
It also hasn't even been released.
Exactly.
Until what, the 13th?
Yeah. People are just building it continuously because, well, that's what we do. That's what we do when the new commander comes out.
Once there's dedicated servers to commanders, the commanders start getting built out to where they start getting solved and start actually putting out results. That's one thing that I've noticed about Raul, is that he's a fairly new commander to the scene. He's only been really of name since like maybe late January, early February. Except for a few spot tournaments last year where he showed up like 1 or 2 times. It's this year he's really starting to pick up some steam, so we're working on that in terms of how he goes. But I agree, Stella Lee is definitely the more like robust / resilient commander of the two, even though she's also a glass cannon. Basically, the moment Stella Lee comes into play, everyone's like, well, she's planning on winning next turn, we need to stop it.
Yeah, she definitely has. She's starting to get a bit of a boogeyman.
Yeah, because she suffers from that I don't have haste thing. If she had haste, people wouldn't have a chance to stop her. Them casting Stella Lee basically tells you, okay, you've got 1 turn to stop me or else I'm going for a win. That's that.
But like, for a great example is like of decks kind of slowly appearing out of nowhere is Plagon.
That's a wild one that's recently been blown.
Plagon hadn't even seen tournament play till November. Like, no one was on Plagon. And then a group of people, like the commander, believed what it could do. I mean, I see why they say it, because it has, like, the number one rule that I have for what is a CDH commander, and that is a CEDH commander is a commander that can draw you cards or create some sort of value engine. Whether it's a tutor, whether it's a draw, whether it's a sack outlet, whether it's just free. And so because it is free, you can kill it. Like it has a value outlet stapled to it. So whenever there's a value outlet stapled to a commander, that's normally a really good sign that it's going to be viable in CDH. Like, I mean, that commander didn't even exist until November, and then came out and has done okay for itself. I mean, it's only at like 10% conversion, so it's not great, but it's been slowly getting better, and it will continue to get better. I mean, its top performance so far was back in December, so I imagine it will continue to grow as a deck.
Oh, definitely. Another one I've been seeing blow up over the last year and a half. I want to say post ban, it's definitely gotten more repetition too, is Magda. I didn't see it as much before the bans, but after the bans, I see that every tournament, every handful of games, there's somebody playing Magda. Super, super common out of nowhere, but it's a deck that's been around forever.
Well, Dockside was just keeping Magda down single-handedly.
Oh, definitely.
Like when you have 100% Dockside in your deck, like in your decks, because Dockside was so powerful, you basically couldn't run an artifact or an enchantment-based deck. Period.
Tivit's another one that jumped after ban too.
Mhm.
Same reason.
Yeah.
And both of those were still very strong decks. It's just they were hidden because of those Dockside specifically. And it's that they're both in the top 9 now because of it, which is kind of wild.
That's how you know that banning Dockside was a good decision. That's the number one indicator, because the decks in the format, the number of decks that really relied on Dockside, there aren't many of them, but there are a couple that really relied on Dockside, and like, yes, they have gone away, but the meta share has increased from all of these other decks so much that it's definitely worth it. I'm still waiting for Hashaton to catch a win.
Well, I mean, it's getting there. It's in the top. It's number 12 right now in the top 16. It hasn't gotten higher than a 6th.
Yeah, if you look at it though, it's still a ways off. Like, the thing is, you actually have to win a tournament. That's the one problem. I think that is the difference between a CEDH and a TDH deck. Is has the deck won a tournament?
Another one that's new too, Glarb. That's one that's kind of that's really new. Bloomberg was what, 4 or 5 months ago, and
more like 8 now.
Okay, and February and January and in October, all of them first place wins, all 60 plus players. Like, that's a new one that it came out of nowhere. It was solved extremely quickly and just went off to the races.
Yeah.
My question becomes, when you say win a tournament, how many tournaments does that deck have to win before it starts garnering talk? Like, does it have to win just the one tournament? and become a hot topic because of that one tournament, or do you think it needs to win like 2 or 3 before it can start actually being talked about as a TEDH deck?
One tournament, but with the caveat that it has to win that one tournament that's over 120 people.
That's a high one, honestly. Most tournaments are 60.
Yeah, so it has to win a major tournament. But if you notice, every deck we've discussed so far, for the most part, has won a 100 people. It has to have won a tournament with over 100 people.
The Felithar list that we discussed, top 16, but top 16 to 70 plus player tournament. So if it had been 120 plus, it might have actually gotten some talk from some of the CEDH tournament guides because of the fact that it had top 16. If it had top 16 to 120, it might have gotten more talk.
Oh yeah, it would. If it was at least a 100-person tournament, it would have definitely gotten more talk. The thing about 60 people tournaments is there's just less rounds.
Yeah.
So with less rounds, it's much easier to overlook. It's much easier for a deck to win but be inconsistent than it is to win consistently. So it takes a lot of consistency to win like a 5, 6, 7 round tournament.
That's fair. One other myth that I want to bring up from one of the other discords is that CEDH has no Rule 0. There is no discussion before the games about what commanders we play and such, which, to be fair, a lot of times doesn't happen simply because we already know the decks because we're playing with people that we've played with constantly, so we know pretty much what deck they're going to bring to the table. But if it's a new environment, does the Rule 0 conversation happen often when it's outside of tournament settings?
I don't see it super often. Sometimes people will ask, and if people ask, I have zero problems with, like explaining it. And I've seen that across the board. Like, it's like if it's one of the like off meta decks, and somebody's like, okay, what does this play like? Just so people are kind of aware instead of being completely in the dark. And sometimes people don't want to share that, and that's in a competitive setting, giving that information can change the balance of the game. So I can understand not having Rule 0 because you're competing, and when you're competing, you're wanting to go for the prize. So having that hidden little nugget in your deck is extremely beneficial. But when you're playing CDH with your friends in your communities consistently and you bring a new deck, a lot of the time, from what I've seen from LGSs, from the Discord, they do have that talk if it's a new deck or something that we haven't seen before. That communication does happen because it's like, well, this is something new. Maybe this is something that might blow up. And by having that conversation, you're helping each other grow and be better players.
And I also think a lot of that comes down to the fact that when people are getting into a CEDH environment, to some degree, even if you don't know what that specific deck is and what it's running, like, you have a good idea of what the win conditions are going to be.
Yeah, I'd say the commander definitely gives you a telegraph of what the deck does.
Mm-hmm. It should. If it's a good CEDH deck, it should.
Yeah. Kind of like how when people are like, well, what does Felithar do? And literally everybody else but that one person at the table can say, it's a Hulk deck. I understand a lot of the newer players don't really necessarily know what defines a Hulk deck. Because a lot of people play like Tymna Kodama. A lot of people play Tymna Halana. Felithar's not a really common Hulk style deck that you see. However, I do have the argument that I believe she is one of the strongest Hulk commanders that has come out in recent years outside of the partner commanders. Because the partner commanders, they have a lot of like strength over other decks because they have the versatility for their commanders.
Yeah, and most of them aren't even on Hulk. There's only like 1 or 2 Hulk decks left in partner commanders.
Yeah.
Realistically,
I haven't seen one since I started.
I mean, the only one is like the what's his name? It's black, green, and something else. God, what is his name? He's the guy who has the sack on it.
The only one I can think of that you might be thinking of is Tevish, and then some other. I can't remember the other partners,
Thrasios?
but it's
It's Tevis
something.
Thrasios.
Tevish Thrasios, yeah.
Yeah, and I think even they've moved off of Hulk now.
Yeah, it feels like it's too slow in that.
Yeah, they moved off of Hulk lately. Yeah, so like there really isn't many Hulk decks left. But for a long time, Tevish Thras was the Hulk deck. But that's just with the new stuff that keeps coming out, and with just people exploring and doing more things, and like,
For example, me finding the Gormon's Talent Morin Soul Trader Cauldron Familiar line. A lot of people don't realize that that actually goes infinite, and it's another Samwise Gamgee line outside of Samwise Gamgee. Yes, one of the pieces is fetchable by Hulk, but at the same time, it's a hard to stop piece once it's on the board. If the Gormon's Talent resolves, there's a good chance that piece is just sticking, and you just have to wait for the other 2 pieces if you can't get the Hulk to go.
and that's kind of what you're gonna see, right? Like stuff goes in and out of format. It's like any other format, right? Like I don't know how many people here played Modern for a long time, but like I think Jeweled Amulet or Amulet Titan is the best example of a deck that has gone in and gone out and will be back and like is a continuous menace in that format and will probably never go away. You're going to continuously see it in some form or other return because that is how good the deck is. It's just, are the current enablers capable of using it effectively? That also comes down to why people feel there's not a lot of Rule Zero conversation, because it is a very specific format. Any of the other main formats, I don't know, Standard, for example, you don't really have a Rule Zero in Standard. Like there's no initial conversation because you know what's coming. You sit down at the table and you know you guys are both trying to play to win.
Yeah, I guess with that, we could end that topic on the statement of Rule Zero for CEDH is essentially just banter about the commanders and why you main them versus other commanders, if it even comes up. I think Mike had one last one last myth that he wanted to bring up.
So most of these myths have been pre-game, like before the game even starts, or right at the beginning of the game. A couple that I want to look at too is with in-game during your games. Obviously, sometimes there's a couple of them. There's ones that we have covered in prior podcasts of politics. There's the politicking that people use it to gain an edge, and there's always a sleight of hand to it. I don't personally believe that is the case. Some people do use that and are kind of sneaky about it, whether it's through weird word choices or they're trying to point that direction somewhere else. It does happen, but sometimes it's just those politics are just used to inform newer players of something they might not be aware of being a combo, an infinite combo. I don't know if that's something you guys have necessarily seen, but that's something that I've kind of pointed out with those myths.
Well, so as far as like politicking goes, like there can be a lot of politicking going on at the CDH table. Now, some of it, in my opinion, if it's a casual table with friends sitting around, it should always be. It should be less about getting an edge and more about just like instructing and informing and trying to like make a good game out of it. Like, hey, no one cast a tutor there's an Oppo on board, or he has Oppo mana up, and just like informing people of general stuff while we're having fun. And then there is definitely another like piece of politicking where either people just actively inaccurate about how they describe what they're doing, or will like give straight up falsehoods about the direction they've chosen to go. Like someone say they vampiric tutored for a soul ring, or they vampiric tutored like 2 or 3 times, and they're like, oh, I'm not gonna win. And then like they draw their card, and then they're like, oh well, now I'm gonna win. It's like you were about to win before. You tutored 3 times. Like let's be real here. That card didn't impact what your plans are. You're just now using that as an excuse. Like that kind of stuff always feels bad, and I hate seeing it when it's at a casual table. Because yeah, CEDH can definitely be casual. Just a group of friends sitting around playing CEDH, laughing and enjoying their
Honestly, just high power Magic at that point.
Yeah, it's just Magic with the strongest decks. And a lot of that is learning. Like going like, hey, like pay attention to this, he can do this. And that's a lot of what we do, generally speaking. Where like you definitely get people who will speak at a casual table as if it's life and death tournament situation, or try to take control of the entire conversation. And that feels awful, in my opinion. I would suggest less people do that in a casual environment.
Yeah. With the politicking, sometimes it can be as simple as keep up the mana for the Vexing Bubble just in case you need to unlock us to be able to stop one person from winning. Don't pay for the Esper Sentinel this time.
Yeah, I think I said that literally to, was it you? I said that to yesterday? Like, you're gonna have to pop that Vexing Bubble.
You said let them draw, leave them 1 mana up. And that's actually the second time I've had that specific situation come up where Vexing Bubble needed to be kept up. The first time, I literally learned always leave that mana up, because then you can unlock someone who could straight up stop someone from winning if they needed to. Because the previous game to the one that we had, there was a mental misstep and a Pact of Negation that were known knowledge to me. I should have kept up a mana so that I could crack the bauble so that they could stop the person that was going for the win in that game, and I ended up choosing not to. I chose to pay for the Esper Sentinel versus leaving the mana up.
Yeah.
When I told you not to.
And so, sometimes it just behooves you to go, hey, like, this needs to happen. And that is the type of good communication that I like, right? Because that's just people talking about the board state. That's not, like, so much someone trying to take over the entire flow of the game and force other people to do their will. In casual games, I hate that. In tournament games, I do that. Because that's a totally different conversation, right? In a tournament game, you have basically taken your day off to go to this tournament. Like, whether or not it's like...
And you've paid entry to win.
Yeah. Whether or not you're working, or whether or not you had to like actually take day off, you had to drive 3 to 4 hours. Like, people, you invest time and energy into tournaments. But if I'm sitting on my computer and it's like 6 o'clock at night and I just got off work and I want to play some CDH, this is kind of the only format I play nowadays. So if I want to play some CDH, sit down and jam cards with my friends, I don't want to deal with a 4-hour politics session where like you go, no, you got to do this, 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 and this. Like, just stop. Just stop doing that.
Yeah. So kind of on the back of that, I want to kind of bring up this other one. We brought this up with Entrebic in our last podcast here, is The tutors.
Mhm.
Whether a lot of people think and believe in countering what comes from the tutor instead of
Yeah.
countering the tutor. There's two sides to this, in my opinion. I believe definitely in the countering of the tutor if you have the ability, because not a lot of people run more non-creature counters than they do run creature counters or ways of removal. Though that is shifting with more spot removal and stuff like that. If you have the ability to counter that worldly tutor or that enlightened tutor, instead of waiting to see what they get, or the black tutor, because they might get something and your counter no longer is valid.
I think it's very counter dependent, right? You need to look at what you have in your hand and counter what is necessary.
Knowing the limits of your own deck so that you know exactly whether you need to counter the tutor or counter the thing.
Yeah. And how many general answers you have in your deck that will allow you to answer a problem. Like, do you have enough answers that you can answer this and protect your potential win? Is that something that's going to be viable for you? Like, if you have a mental misstep in hand, you should normally counter the tutor if you think they're going for the win. If you don't think they're going to the win, then mental misstep is one of my preferred defensive spells because it hits a lot of the main counters that people run. So, like, that's kind of my view on it, is that it's super dependent upon the deck and what you're going for and whether you think they can win with it. And most of that is learned in time. And the more time you spend playing your deck and learning your deck and practicing your deck, the better you will get with those judgment calls. So I don't think you definitely don't want to always counter the...
I'm not saying always, but sometimes people, it's like, well, this is probably going to go grab that win con. And if they're not willing to share what they're getting, more like they are, they're not going to tell you what it is. And if you have that ability to stop that potential, usually if they're tutoring for something that's just going to help their board state and it's not necessarily going to win them the game, they're going to share that. They're like, yeah, I'm just tutoring for a land because I am mana screwed. Or I'm just tutoring for a mana dork for the same reason. Or this person has something and they're trying to go for the win. Let me tutor to go and get something else, like to stop them from winning. Obviously, let them tutor for that if that's what you feel the board state needs, unless it hampers your own game plan.
Kind of like in a game yesterday where I was like, hey, Wishclaw Talisman, you crack it for what you need. I'm literally going to crack it for a land if you give it to me. And then I proceeded to grab a land. I showed everybody the land. I had needed another white source, and I showed them I had grabbed a Savannah, and it was literally going to be my land for turn.
But we had other ones yesterday during our play day where I'm like, hey, you need to counter this tutor because if not, they're going to win. And they went and tutored for that silence because they already had win in hand. And they had, but they didn't have a free counter spell beforehand. They vamp tutored to get the silence so that they could cast it on there as soon as they upkept because they didn't have a white mana source. Where they tapped out to counter, and it's like, now's the time to counter. It forces that free counter spell if they had it, and they didn't. They had, I think, Offer and a Flusterstorm.
That's also kind of a lose-lose, though, right? You counter for something that goes and gets a counter. Like, that's a tough situation. I almost say, but you obviously don't know what he's going to get.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, there are definitely situations where you should 100% counter tutors. You just have to know what you're trying to do, what's available to you, and to some degree, you're playing to your win condition. Like, if by countering this, you're putting yourself in a situation where you can no longer win on your turn, then it might behoove you not to. And just let them do the thing and hope they don't have it.
Yeah, so it's definitely more of a situational choice. A lot of time when people do call it out, I've been at plenty of tables where like you don't counter the tutor, you always counter what's comes from the tutor, and it's like that's not always the case.
You don't always counter anything. You don't
Yeah,
like you. There are
there's
things
no
you
guarantee.
should. There should things you should probably never counter.
Turn one manifold.
Yeah, yeah. You should not with a hard counter that you can use like the next turn. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, that's really not what I was referring to. But generally
I've definitely
speaking,
done that.
yeah, there are things you should never counter because you're just not going to get a huge benefit from doing so. You have your average deck has an X number of counters inside of it, and those are the maximum amount of interaction you have available to you in order to stop a win condition from occurring. So, say that number is 9, hypothetically. So, for every one that you use, you are losing one to use later. So, you have to be kind of particular about when you use those. And it can put you in a really bad situation if you counter something that
Wrong.
doesn't move your it just doesn't move your board state forward. Like you want to counter stuff that's going to move your board state backwards. That's why earlier I was saying how I basically never counter heuristic studies. I almost never counter value engines because a value engine doesn't like using that counter doesn't move my board state forward. It doesn't put me any closer to winning.
If anything, countering that value engine could be detrimental to you because the value engine isn't what wins them the game. It's the cards that they draw off of that value engine. Therefore, the cards you should counter are what they draw and use off of that value engine.
Yeah. Now, if that value engine is going to stop you from winning the game, 100%. If you're on a food chain deck, for example, great example. If you're running a food chain deck and someone casts a heuristic study right before you're gonna food chain off, like, yeah, you should counter that.
Or remove it if you can.
Yeah, your loop is gonna be done, if not. But if you're just playing a normal deck and you go, oh no, he turned to heuristic study, let me force a will this. Well, not only have you lost your force of will that you can use to stop a potential win con or protect your win con, but you've also like hampered one other player who could potentially do the same.
Yeah. I will counter a turn 1 heuristic though.
I mean, you can. I'm still kind of not for it, but I definitely see it's definitely much more appealing to do so because on a turn run heuristic, they're going to get 6 cards before the end of turn 1. And that could be a blowout.
That kind of hand acceleration makes it very tempting to counter a turn 1 heuristic versus turn 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If everyone mulligan correctly, you should have the mana up available to pay the 1. You shouldn't not be paying the 1. And if everyone pays the 1, like, each person can play the 1 3 times before you personally have gone negative on mana allotment that they spent to use it. That's kind of how you should think about it.
Yeah.
Because if you pay the 1 3 times in a row, that's the only time that it actually cost you anything personally. So until then, just pay the 1. Wait for someone else to remove it. Wait for someone else to destroy it.
So with that being said, basically just assess what counters are in your hand. See if it's worth countering the tutor versus what they tutored for. If you need to, counter the tutor. If you aren't worried about what they're grabbing necessarily, and you believe that you have what can stop what they're grabbing, go ahead and let them grab whatever. It's essentially just a call based on what's in your hand.
Call hand and deck dependent. If you're playing, let's say, a Thyam deck,
you
should probably counter the tutor. You should probably counter the tutor.
Or Felithar, if he's doing a creature tutor, counter the tutor. Either going for Hulk or it's going for a combo piece.
Yeah. Like, if, like, Thyam if you counter the creature itself, he still has it. It didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
It just moves zones to another place usable.
yeah. So you have to counter the tutor. Like,
I think that's fair for most reanimator style decks where they want stuff in their graveyard quick.
Yeah.
Sometimes Tivit decks I've even seen it where they want to shove their stuff into the graveyard and they'll just pull it from the graveyard.
yep. I mean, I was working on a Zur Reanimator deck, actually. I still think it's viable. I think it has a lot of work that needs to be done. Because you still run Adnauds, right? Because you can't still do the entire Adnauds package. You just get an attack trigger and you Adnauds your whole deck. Like, you can still do that. Because with the attack trigger, you get Phyrexian Unlife, and then you can still win.
Yeah. I mean, like, I did, like a lot of people were on Master of Keys. I decided to do the Aminatou. Similar thing to a Reanimator Zur, where I want things into my graveyard, and my goal is to get those value enchantments and stuff out, as well as some very valuable creatures that just win the game by coming out. Broodlord, Broodlord combos are there. There's obviously Thassa's Oracle. If I get Thassa's in the grave, cool, I have 6 different ways to reanimate it, and it just sits there. And I don't mind if it sits in the graveyard because I have it as an access at any point in time the moment I get that Tainted Pact or Demonic Console. Or just have a way to burn my deck through, mill or through the surveil triggers from the commander if the game goes long enough.
And sometimes it's just if you try to counter the tutor, it's just going to be a bluff too. Like, they tutor, they cast Vampiric Tutor before the draw step. And they're sitting on Thassa's Demonic. And so they want you to... yeah, they want you to counter that. Like, this is a bluff. And especially if all of their free, like, counter spells are already been used. They're betting on you countering that.
Or having a win con in the grave and going for a reanimate on it, even though you don't have the other piece, because you have your win con in hand. They're going to fight religiously to stop that reanimate versus like once they've done that, it's like, okay, well, then watch me just Thassa's Demonic.
Yeah. For jam a free win.
Yeah. With that being said, this may be a good stopping point for tonight. I think we've covered several myths. We may do a follow-up podcast on this based on if we think of more or get more from the community. Go ahead and leave comments in the description, or leave comments in the comments section down below. Talk about what your myths that you think need to be discussed are. Go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe. Do all the things for the YouTube algorithm. Until next time, keep your brews strong, your plays sharper, and your games legendary. As always, may your decks be aged to perfection.